Hi, and welcome to Answers News for August the 6th, 2018. And we are here live at the Creation Museum with a wonderful audience, so make yourselves known. There we go.
Hey, that's amazing. You actually said hi and it sounded friendly.
Yeah,
I
I'm
know.
telling you.
What can I- and it's a Monday, so you've got to give me extra credit for that.
So, well, as notifications go out, and we always spend a couple of minutes just making some announcements and so on, let me remind people about the great news that all of our videos are going to be available on PureFlix, pureflix.com, and that's like a Netflix, but it's more of a Christianized, family-friendly version of Netflix. And pureflix.com have this arrangement. They're putting all of our videos, past and present, up there, eventually about 500 videos, and they're putting more up each week. But actually, when you subscribe to Netflix, if nothing else, even to get the AIG videos, our answers just PureFlix, not Netflix won't show any of our videos. Okay, so PureFlix, you actually, for the cost of less than one DVD a month, you get all our videos, and we're going to have all the future ones up on there as well. But then you get all these other choices on there too to help with various family-friendly programming at home. So you can go in there and sign up for that. You get your first month free, a trial month free.
Wonderful.
So I was down the Ark recently with this gorgeous woman.
Who is
There's
your
Nan
wife?
Nan.
Yeah, and I said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I'm married to you." So that was my wife. We were down there. What I wanted to show people, you know, one of the things that we do at the Ark, in the gift store, we have a massive fair trade section. And fair trade, these are items that we have a buyer that gets them from all over the world, from different mission groups, and they helped underprivileged people. And actually, because of all the items that have been sold in the gift store at the Ark, it's really helped a lot of people have employment, have money for their family in some of these terribly underprivileged areas, and it's been tremendous for them. And so we can't even keep that fair trade,
It's really
fair trade material in stock.
stuff too. I mean, it's really tremendous. I've bought a lot of fair trade items, and they're just unique gifts. You know how you get kind of tired of giving the same old thing every year? This is really a way to not only give a unique gift, but help someone have a livelihood in another country, not just giving them money, but they're earning the money and help them.
And you can tell the love that's involved in these things, you know, intricately weaving things. And
the mission groups we work with that obtain these in all sorts of places, they also bring them the gospel as well, which is really, really good. Yeah. So, hey, wonder, you know what we should mention? Our Christmas program at the museum in the Ark starts the day after Thanksgiving. So this year, I think it's November 23 through to December 30. And that's a great time to come.
Vacation. What are you talking about that for? I don't want to be thinking about Christmas and snow and cold.
I do.
You do.
I don't like the heat. No.
But right after Thanksgiving, huh?
Right after Thanksgiving. So that's a great time people come and we'll have a lot of extra fair trade items as well.
Very nice.
But hey, I wanted to mention something about this past weekend. I was very busy here at the Creation Museum and very busy at the Ark. In fact, let me show you some photographs. Here's the Ark here and the whole complex that we have there at Ark Encounter. That's our new 2,500 seat auditorium we're building. You know, in this area right here beside the Ark, we've got a big glice rink going in for our Christmas programs. People can come and do skating. But these are pictures taken from Saturday, because you know what happened on Saturday? We broke our record.
Yeah.
We had over 8,500 people at the Ark. And in fact, between the Ark and the Creation Museum, there are like 11,200 visitors between both places. And for the whole weekend, it was over 15,500 visits to the Ark and the Creation Museum for Saturday and Sunday. And Sunday, we only open half day. It's from midday on.
That's incredible.
So, It is incredible. And you know what? You know what's interesting? Recently, the secular media and the atheists so hate the success of the Ark, and it was interesting. Before it opened, the secular media and the atheist groups were saying things like, "They're not going to get people to come, and people aren't going to come. They're not going to get even 200,000 people." And they were even saying the museum is failing anyway, and because they've been saying that for the last 11 years that it's been failing, and they've been saying it's going to close down for the last 11 years as well. Because the secularists and the atheists, secular media, they can't stand a Christian organization actually having such success and reaching so many people.
You know, this is nothing new, though. I mean, the secular media, back in the days before Noah, I mean, they really wanted the Ark to fail as well, but it turns out they were all washed up.
Oh, very funny. Very funny, buddy. Well, you know what? It's interesting that this came on the heels of, there are a number of articles, there are some atheist groups and others that they have no idea how everything works at the Ark Encounter or at the museum.
Well, they don't come,
oh,
so
no.
how could they know?
But they have no understanding of all sorts of aspects of things, and they think they can take some amount of ticket tax we have to pay to Williamstown and work backwards and all that. And all their assumptions are so flawed, but they try to make out that there's just when the whole place is failing. It's just incredible.
And yet we have record days.
Oh yeah, have record days. In fact, numbers have been climbing ever since we opened.
Yeah.
And we have more and more people coming, word of mouth, spreading. It's so successful, and I'm sort of pleased those articles, even though they had stupid headlines. And Fortune magazine, Fortune magazine, their article was irresponsible journalism. That's all you can call it, irresponsible journalism. But I love the fact that we now have a term that has become so popularized, people know what we mean every time we say it. Fake news. So
fake news,
I think the President of the United States actually coined that term, didn't he? And has popularized that term. And I love to use it all the time now with the secular media and the atheists, because they put up fake news every day. The good thing is there's publicity, and the more people see that, and we can show people photographs and so on and what's really going on, the more popular the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter become. Actually, we're gearing up for a real busy next couple of months, because all the big bus tours start coming back in again. So anyway.
Somebody on here says they love the travel bag that they brought here that was fair trade, and the artwork that they purchased. So a lot on the fair trade thing. And somebody loves your puns.
Hey, all right.
They say Bodie's humor is back today.
So, somebody said here, the media, secularists don't like anything that spreads his word. That's true. Hey, you know what? We're in a spiritual battle, and in a way, this sort of opposition, here's what I would say. If you're not getting that sort of opposition, you should ask yourself what you're doing. And I think that's true of any Christian work and churches. If you're not getting opposition, what are you doing? Because the Bible makes it very clear that men love darkness rather than light, and there's a narrow way within the broad way, and to expect persecution, to expect opposition, and certainly we get a lot of it at the Ark and the Creation Museum, because it's impacting so many people. So someone said here, best trip our family has ever made in years. We love the Ark Encounter.
Look, somebody else on here said, thank you, Bodie, I've missed your jokes.
Glad someone's missed them. Okay.
Somebody else said here, I just listened to an atheist podcast. What are you listening to an atheist podcast for? On your numbers, I just had to laugh at these hateful individuals. Yeah, they are hateful. But anyway, praise the Lord that they're responding, because it means they're taking notice of us.
Right, yeah.
So, and they give us more and more publicity.
That's right. All right.
Let's
you
jump
ready to
into
go
the
here?
news. Yeah.
Lab-made fossils cram thousands of years into 24 hours. So this is a really interesting article talking about how they, in a lab, they've been basically able to mimic what happens in nature over supposedly millions of years. They've been able to do it in 24 hours.
24 hours.
So what does that tell you?
It tells you it doesn't take millions of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because all it takes is the right conditions. Right?
I just used logic.
Yes. Logic and
that.
science. This is something you can observe and you can repeat.
Right.
Millions of years, you can't observe it, you can't repeat it. So when somebody says it takes millions of years to form fossils, that's not something that's been observed or repeated. But you have to be very careful of that.
But you know what the secularists say, the evolutionists say? Wow, we can do in a laboratory in hours what it takes nature millions of years to do.
Yeah. And
which means it doesn't take
But
millions of years.
fossils aren't the only thing. I mean, we can make coal in weeks. We can make oil in
Gemstones.
30 minutes. Gemstones, petrified wood, rock layers.
And
rocks,
what's amazing
canyons.
was too, they looked
Yeah.
at these up close under the microscope, and they look identical to the fossils that supposedly took millions of years to form. So it's not just on a surface level, but even on a microscopic level, they're very similar.
Yeah, now essentially really what they did is they heated it up to about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. They put about 3,500 psi of pressure on it. Just to give you an idea, that's about 8,000 feet of ocean water, just to give you an idea about where that would be. The average ocean is about 12,000 feet. So, I mean, there's plenty of water. And, if you think of fossil formation during the flood,
Right.
perfect conditions to
Perfect
make a
for
flood.
that.
Well, and you would have had a lot of volcanic action as well, and so
right.
magma coming up and that sort of
That's
thing would
right.
have been a lot of
Getting
heat.
heat and pressure,
Hey,
That's
did you
a big
notice what
problem.
I said before? You didn't even notice, because we got primarily an American audience. There's some Canadians here too, and someone from Austria.
yeah.
But I said laboratory.
Laboratory, right? Is that
La-
how, is that how
laboratory.
you guys say
We
it?
would say
Laboratory.
laboratory.
Laboratory is how we say it.
Laboratory.
Yeah.
Laboratory.
Whatever.
anyway.
About the only thing I
Aluminium.
like, one of the things I like about the Australian and British accents, instead of evolution, it's evolution.
EVIL.
I love how it sounds like evil, evolution.
Yeah,
I like how they-
EVIL. We should
Yeah.
spell it that way.
Yeah, I like
You know,
that. I
that
like
would be
apparently
great.
people have tried this, and they always ran into a problem trying to make these fossils in a lab before, because they basically did it as a closed system. So all the biomaterial stayed there, so as they tried to compress it, it didn't quite work right. The difference with this one is they allowed that to seep out, which is exactly what would happen with a global
Yeah,
flood.
And the other thing to remember is to make a fossil, it requires a catastrophic event. You've got to cover something quickly. I mean, when I'm teaching kids, I use the example, imagine your pet cat just died. And I use cats because I don't like cats.
Earl
But
the
Here we
cat.
go again.
imagine
Remember the
yeah,
Earl
and
the
you go
cat
out and you
slides.
put your pet cat on the front yard and you put a sign on it, dead cat fossilizing, scientific experiment, do not touch. And then you start taking notes, right? Day 1, dead cat on grass. Day 7, smelly dead cat on grass. Day 14, very smelly dead cat on grass.
And the coyotes got to it.
Day 15, bits of cat missing. Day 32, where is cat?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've got to cover something quickly to preserve it, right?
That's right.
We
Yeah,
had
you want to
some-
seal out the oxygen and
Yeah.
make it a candidate for fossilization.
Yeah, we had some
replace mineral.
roadkill recently on the road we live on, and the vultures were there. There was a coyote I saw there. There was nothing left after a couple of days. Stuff like that just doesn't fossilize.
You sure some people didn't get bits of it? No. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Worms.
What
Oh,
kind
I'm
of
sorry. I
comments?
was reading a comment on Facebook. All right. Worms frozen for 42,000 years in Siberian permafrost wriggle to life. So these are nematodes, which are microscopic worms, and they say they've been asleep for 42,000 years of what we call imaginary time.
IT,
Because
yep.
It doesn't do that way. And so the fact that they've been able to revive these things is pretty amazing.
It really is, yeah.
Even for it being just thousands of years old.
Well, if we're saying the Ice Age was after the flood, these were more likely preserved during the Ice Age. So what, less than
Just
4,000
about
years
1,000
ago, maybe?
Or less, yeah.
So, but could they really last? Could their DNA really last 42,000 years, even with
I find that hard to believe.
radioactivity?
You have a lot of radioactive elements in the soil, and that's going to affect the DNA and really harm it. And even just, you've got potentially water and other things that could damage it, even in permafrost. So I have a really hard time buying that the DNA is even going to be viable in these things after
Right.
42.
Well, this process is called cryptobiosis. And, this has happened a number of other times. We see this with other instances. Probably one of the most
Bacteria.
popular was, does anybody remember sea monkeys? Do you guys remember that? Some of you guys are nodding, like, yeah, sea monkeys. That's basically just brine shrimp.
Right.
That
Right.
were essentially put into suspension, either frozen or whatever it might be. Add the water, and boom, they come moving around
I
again.
think this really speaks to the fact that they can't be that old.
Right,
Yeah,
it really
I
does.
agree, yeah.
And things can survive. And what's interesting too is that these nematodes that they found are very similar to nematodes that we have today, two nematode species. So they haven't even changed that much in their supposed 42,000 years.
That's because they didn't evolve.
That's right.
Well, the interesting thing they said about all these worms that they studied is they realized that they were all females. Maybe
What can I
females
say?
last longer than men.
Well,
Well-
and organisms can have the ability to survive freezing. Some of them have anti-freeze proteins. There's certain types of fish that have that. And so they can actually survive pretty amazingly well, but
It's
not
down
for
to
that
50
long.
and I'm
There's
free.
Hey,
no
somebody
way.
said here, hey, what about using, what they say? They said, how about a dead frog instead of a dead cat? But frogs have a use, right? I mean, they eat insects and things.
Yeah.
Cats, what do? They just cost you money to feed.
Someone here says they love Dr. Purdum's humor. Seriously.
You got humor?
Yeah, I know. It's amazing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that is amazing.
Hey,
That-
somebody on here said, so small organisms could survive the flood outside of the ark. Not all species need it to be on it. That would only be true, all land-dwelling,
Air-breathing,
air-breathing organisms needed to be on the ark to survive. Now,
Right.
marine creatures didn't, possibly insects didn't, but everything else, if it's going to make it, it's got to be on there.
Right.
But it had to be the land creatures that had the breath of life in them.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
right. I think the Bible gives further clarification if you read through the whole account. The things that breathe through their nostrils.
Insects
and so
could
forth.
easily survive in larval form, pupal form, egg
Right, egg
form,
form.
On driftwood
floating
and so
mats,
forth,
all
yeah.
sorts of things like that.
Right. It's,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the ones that were land dwelling that really required access to land. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Most Americans support gene editing for babies to treat diseases, poll finds. So
What?
basically, they did this research to the Pew Research Center, found that 76% of Americans say that altering an unborn baby's genetic characteristics in order to treat a serious disease is okay. And this
Now,
is-
would that work on baldingness? Like if I was, in the
It's
womb,
not
and
a
they're like, this
serious
guy's going to go bald one day, let's edit
Well,
that.
my understanding is the problem is that when they've done these, and you would know,
The gene
Dr. Verdon,
editing.
when they've done the gene editing, they haven't realized that they've caused other problems because there's other levels of information in there.
Well,
That's
and
the key too, yeah.
That's the problem. This is based on the CRISPR technology, or what they're talking about. That's the most efficient gene editing technology that we have today. The problem is
Hey, Ken, can you change the slide?
Yeah. Recent
Oh.
research just came out that said
There
CRISPR
we go.
is not as error-free as they originally thought. And actually, the day that came out, even the CRISPR places that develop CRISPR technology, their stocks dropped way down because people are really concerned now that what they thought was the magic bullet that was going to save us all isn't. It's got a lot of problems with
But-
it, and so.
You know what I was thinking was, look, we know we live in a sin-cursed universe, and we know there are diseases and problems. And when doctors use surgery techniques to try to repair something in the body, or pharmacists, put together drugs to try to, like antibiotics and so on, to try to help with diseases. But to me, that's different to gene editing. Gene editing, you're actually playing with all the information that God has put there.
You're playing God is really what
and you're
you're
really
doing.
playing God, and who knows what you could be interrupting and hurting, and because we don't know much about it. So
That's right, we don't
I
know
see
all
it as that can be a real problem. And as you said earlier, as we were discussing this, it can be passed on to the next generation.
Well, that's what CRISPR would do, is it would genetically modify the child. I mean, at the the one cell stage, when you're before any splitting occurs. So that means that information is going to be passed down to their children. And right now, that's not even legal in the U.S. to do that. But the question becomes, who decides what's a serious disease?
right.
Like you were joking about baldness, but
Yeah.
why not? Why couldn't that be considered something that we don't want to have anymore? And so that becomes the problem.
Right. Why
Who
couldn't my
decides?
kids have been born with straight teeth and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I think back theologically, it is people trying to play
It's a-
God.
yeah.
I mean, we think, when God created Adam, yes, he created the DNA. When he created Eve, from Adam's side, yes, he manipulated the DNA to make a woman. We see those elements, but God knows all things. God knows what he's doing. When we step into that position, we're fine.
Well,
we make problems. We have
and
problems.
even in issues like, and this gets to be an emotional topic for some, but even like in vitro fertilization, man is also playing God, because a number of those fertilized eggs and so on, they often wash away basically, or destroy, isn't that right?
Well, it depends on how they're doing the actual procedure. And so if they're creating a lot of them and not using them and destroying the ones they don't use, then
That's playing with
obviously
life,
that's
right?
wrong. Obviously
Yeah.
that's murder. But It just depends on how they do it.
Hey, by the way, some people went on here, they must have been upset by what I said about cats, that frogs are more useful than cats. They said cats are mouses on the farm, they kill mice and rats and so on. That may be true today, but remember, that's because they're fallen. In a perfect world before sin,
but in a fallen
cats
world,
didn't
they're
eat
good.
mice.
Right. But in a fallen world, they're good. Right? So somebody on here said people hate GMO food but want GMO babies. That's actually a really good point.
That is a good point.
It's kind of true there. Okay.
Someone wants to give me a cat for Christmas.
Do it.
Hey, as long as it's a dead cat, that's okay.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. This atheist positive message for children. Okay. So how this got started was Ken was on Twitter, and so he tweeted something, and as a response, this is the atheist response.
I just want you to know, I give atheists purpose and meaning in life.
That's true.
Yeah.
There are some of those atheists that sit out there, they're in their mother's basement, and they've got their computer, and they're waiting for a Ken Ham tweet.
Ken Ham tweeted,
They get the Ken Ham tweet, and then they write a 20-page article about it. It's amazing.
You know, that is shocking. Why would they spend so much time doing that to a tweet? I mean, you've written whole books, and they don't read those.
Oh, no, they don't go and read our articles. No, and they take my tweet that you're limited to a certain number of words and treat it as if I wrote this complex, detailed, technical referenced article. And then they respond to it. It's amazing.
Well, this one was pretty straightforward. You tweeted, what positive message, or something like this, what positive message could atheists possibly have for children? And so he took up the challenge to write something positive for children.
Well, you know, that's very positive of him, but the key wasn't really that atheists can't be positive. Of course they can be positive. They're made in the image of God, and the Bible's true, and so therefore they're in that position. The issue here is, within their own worldview, within an atheistic worldview, can you make sense of being positive, or can you even define it within that religion? And see, they basically ignored that. That's called a straw man. And then they said, well, see, look, we can be positive. Well, that wasn't really the argument.
The interesting thing is, when they're trying to be positive, the one thing he didn't mention was, you know, he goes through and says, I tell this to kids, and we can tell this message to kids, and so on. The one thing he didn't say to them was, and when you're dead, you won't remember you're here, and this article will be meaningless because you won't remember it either.
So what if you were positive or negative?
Yeah, so what? But the interesting is, it's really a tirade against Christianity, because that's all atheists can do. They can only have a negative message, right? They don't have a positive message. So he goes
unless
through...
they borrow it.
Unless they borrow it, exactly. Because he goes through here and talks about... you know, do not blame the condition of the world on imperfections of two folks who took a bite out of a fruit and were punished. What does that sound like? Then he goes on and says, the world isn't fallen, you're not some horrible sinner, and then you aren't sinful. And so really, it's just a tirade against Christianity, because that's all they can do.
And even some of this, I mean, think about, here's the positive message he thinks children should have. He says, you know, they need to understand that humans are animals like gorillas, dogs, cats, elephants, and many other kinds of animals. We are not some special species chosen by a creator. Wow.
You know,
here's a positive message for you.
When President Trump ripped into some people about being animals, the press was all over him. You know, was the press all over him for this?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And when you're going to say we're just animals, then what about animals? There are animals that eat each other.
Yeah.
Animals that eat their young.
Siblings,
Yep.
sibling side.
Females that eat the males.
Yep.
Yeah. It gets pretty gross about there, so.
Yeah.
Is that all okay then? I mean, and that's the problem when you read through this whole thing is, you know, he's trying to say, well, you need to make the world a better place. You need to be kind.
Who decides what's better?
Based on what?
That's right. He never defined positive. He has to borrow that from a Christian worldview. Now, I want to encourage him to do that, but within his own worldview, he can't make sense of it. In fact, he went so far as to say, as an atheist, I have a fairly positive message for children that stems not directly from my atheism, and then he keeps going. Well, that's because atheism can't make sense of being positive.
Well, it's interesting. If you watch some of the atheist bloggers, most of what they blog about is being against anything Christian and trying to get anything Christian out of the culture and out of schools. It's like the Freedom from Religion Foundation. They're a group of atheists that, I mean, their whole purpose and meaning in life is just to try to get anything Christian out of the culture. What's their positive response? Well, they want to get anything Christian out of the culture. They're totally against Christianity, and you see that over and over again. It's because underneath it all, as the Bible says, it's evident to all that God created, and we have a sin nature, and they're in rebellion against God, so they lash out at God. Anything to do with Christianity, they lash out at. That's what you see over and over again.
Yeah, you know, there's other things in here, you know, that just drive me nuts. You know, he's like, you know, talking about being kind and striving to make the world a better place matters much more than whether you believe or not, you know, someone's claims about somebody being the Messiah. And that's the positive message for kids that genuinely shouldn't be controversial. And yet here he is being controversial, attacking you about that, doing the opposite of what he actually claimed. That's a double standard.
Well, and he talks about having value and that they can change the world in ways that no one has ever predicted. But yeah, they could. But why does it have to be in a positive way? Why couldn't it be genocide? Or, you know, I mean, that's the thing. When you don't have a foundation for determining what's right and wrong, you have to borrow from a Christian worldview, a biblical worldview to do that.
Here toward the end, one of the things he says, he actually says, including to God, in the off chance that God is real. Now, as soon as I heard him say that, I realized something. That means he's not an atheist. Here he is claiming to be an atheist, but he left open the possibility of God. That's actually the religion of agnosticism. It's
you know,
not atheism.
Richard Dawkins has said the same, that
Bill Nye did the same sorts of things too.
Because they know ultimately they can't say
they can't
100%. And they can't know.
That's right. And they realize that. So what they're doing is they're jumping ship from one religion to another.
Somebody said here, I'm a new viewer. How long does the show run? Millions of years.
Millions of years.
Yeah, we've been doing this for millions of years.
30 minutes. 30 minutes. Okay. Ready to go to the next one?
Let's do it.
Bird DNA helps explain Amazonian rivers' role in evolution. So this is talking about the fact that in the Amazon River, so you've got land on both sides, but the Amazon River in places is miles, you know, wide. You've got birds that are very similar, but they're actually considered different species. So the question they're trying to answer is what caused the speciation? Was it the river itself, which is a geographical barrier, or was there some other reason that caused it, and the river just sort of maintains it, is basically the gist of the article.
And here's basically what they're saying. So we got this particular kind of bird, and there's different species, and that's evolution.
Yeah,
it's got nothing to do with evolution. So it's just different species of birds.
Right. They're all part and parcel of the same kind. So these birds are not really evolving. They're not changing from one bird into like an elephant. You know,
or from one kind into a whole different kind.
Right. It's variation. That's not a big deal. And you know.
But for the young people in the audience, speciation is used as the evidence for evolution in the public school textbooks. But speciation is not evolution. It's like Darwin's finches, the different species on the Galapagos. And you've been to the Galapagos. So what do you have there? Different species of finch. What are there today? Different species of finch. What are you going to have tomorrow? Different species of finch. Is that evolution? That's just finches.
Well, and the type of variation that you see there isn't the type that leads from one kind to a different kind. It just allows variation within. So, so the article kind of looked at the DNA of the birds and determined that they think that the river isn't the reason they speciated. There's got to be some other reason, and that the river just sort of helps maintain it. As we were talking about this before, you would think they could just fly across the river, but they're non-migratory birds, and so it's too big for them to basically fly across. Yeah, they just don't do it. So, so it's kind of interesting.
You know, it's interesting. One of the people they point out in here is Alfred Russel Wallace. You know, he'd kind of been up here and did some research in that particular area. Alfred Russel Wallace was in the mid-1800s as well, and he was actually competing with Darwin for the model of evolution. Had he published just a little bit before Darwin, nobody would have ever remembered Darwin's name, just like you don't probably know who Wallace was. I've actually been to Alfred Russel Wallace's museum in Leicester, England, and it's interesting. Right as you walk in, there's a dragon on the floor and stuff like that. You know, it's fascinating to see his evolutionary museum there, but he was one who came and went.
Hey, somebody here commenting on the atheist article we were actually talking about. They said, what wasted lives. And you think about it, a lot of these atheists, all they do is attack Christianity, attack the Ark Encounter, attack what we do, and then they die, and that's the end of them. But it's not the end of them, because they will stand before a holy God and give account.
They will.
And it's true. What wasted lives?
Yeah. All right. Victorian public servants ordered to use gender-neutral pronouns for they. So the Victorian government staff.
This is in Australia.
Right,
Australia, yeah.
is being asked to avoid using gendered language like he, she, husband, wife. You need to use they and them.
And this is actually the Department of Health
Yes.
that has instructed this.
Human Services.
And they said they want to promote the Wednesday every month as They Day. Can you imagine that going to work? It's They Day today. Hi, they. Z, Z, her.
Well, not even those.
Well,
they just make it simple. I guess they're trying to make it simple by using they or them.
Yeah. And they say in here, non-binary identities are just as valid as binary gendered identities. But here they're saying you're not allowed to use the binary gender identities.
Right, if they're just as valid,
good, but
how
why
come
can't
you're not
you-
allowed to use them?
How come you're not allowed to use them?
It's really a bias against
It sure is. yeah. I mean,
against those who
that's
believe
fallacious reasoning there.
in male and female. The Department of Health will possibly label bathroom facilities to meet specific needs of non-binary, gender fluid, transgender or intersex employees. They're going to have a lot of different bathrooms. Can you imagine all the door? This is for non-binary, this is gender fluid, this is transgender, this is intersex, this is for those who thought they were male but they're not, but they think they are.
How
These
many
are.
does Facebook have now? I mean, do they?
I
mean,
don't
it was
even know.
over
It's hundreds.
70 the last I knew.
I thought it was hundreds.
Yeah, over hundreds. Yeah. Oh my
But
goodness.
they talk about, you need to avoid using heteronormative language. which,
Such
in
as
other
husband
words,
and wife.
husband and wife, pregnant woman.
But basically using
You can't
normal
even-
language. That's
Yeah.
what
It's
they're
pregnant
saying. Don't use
people,
normal language.
pregnant person. Actually, Avery, our token millennials in the audience today, she's a pregnant
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. Well, and that's why
I'm just trying to get it all right to fit in with where we're supposed to
The
be
other
today.
day I was at a restaurant and somebody pulled up in a car and they had, gay pride on the window that, in like a marker or something. And I thought, what if I put straight pride on mine? I thought people would probably slash my tires, they would be so offended. And yet, I'm supposed to be okay with this, with someone saying this.
It's an
And-
intolerance.
Yeah,
It is.
total intolerance.
Yeah.
You know that. Okay, I think we got time for one more here. This one's a short one. Woman who sued
Well,
Planet.
let me ask a good question here. How do they feel about French and other languages that commonly use gender insensitive pronouns?
Oh yeah, the entire language is built on masculine and feminine.
We've talked about that before with.
They're gonna have
with
to change their
Cram,
whole
with
language.
French. Yeah, they said they.
Their language will have to be outlawed.
That's right. They're
Because
a
you have
binary
masculine
language.
nouns, feminine nouns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we have some of that here in the United States as well, but not to the degree that you would
Yeah.
see in, say, French. Or
But what I
even-
don't understand is if they have they day, they's plural, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So does that mean anyone who's called a they, there's
Yeah,
two,
but
there's
now
two of
they
them?
can be singular. See, they've changed
See,
that
they're
too.
changing
It's
the
a grammar
language
change.
to mean something different. They're
Yeah.
redefining the word they.
Okay, I'm confused.
Mind blown. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they is now singular.
They can be used in a singular sense now, yes, because you're trying to refer to people who either you don't know whether they're male or female, or they don't claim to be either male or female.
This world is going nuts.
It's upside down. It's upside down.
I need to
Okay,
get.
next
Can you
article.
imagine them trying to teach English to
I
little
don't even
kids
want
in
to
school?
think about it.
Oh,
It's
my
hard enough as
goodness.
is.
English is the second language. I don't know if
Oh,
we
I
can
don't
arrive
even-
at that right
yeah,
now.
Yeah,
They're going to have to call the language gender language now.
yeah. That's how sad it is.
Okay, all right.
All right, we'll just finish this last one. Woman who sued Planet
Woman?
Fitness
They're saying woman?
over transgender man in
Man?
locker room.
They're using man?
Shut.
They use man and woman in the one
Oh.
sentence.
I've
What's this
lost
world coming to?
Oh.
Yeah, so basically this woman complained because she is, she is biologically female, went into the locker room to change. There's a biological male in there who claims to be a woman undressing, and she felt very uncomfortable for obvious reason. And Planet Fitness told her, too bad, we allow that, and she started complaining to other women about it and warning them, and they booted her out, basically.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they booted her out, and so she actually went to court over it.
Right, she did.
And now she did win.
She won. It'll go back to the court. Basically, it's going back to the courts to make a decision again on this. So, so we hope that she wins because, like I've been saying all along with this transgender issue and this whole issue, it is a safety issue for women, and this is something that definitely needs to be looked at.
Right.
Yeah, and as
that alone.
as someone said here, I don't think there's anyone out there that thinks it's all right for a 15-year-old daughter to be sharing with a biologically intact 40-year-old man, but that's the sort of stuff that they're condoning and they want. So it's interesting, Planet Fitness actually confirmed their policy. So for anyone who wants to know, if you or your kids are going to Planet Fitness, their policy is to allow members to have access to whatever locker room corresponds with their self-identified gender.
At the time, at the moment.
Yeah, at the moment.
So
Yeah.
you need to be fearful for your
Well, they're not the only
sons and
ones.
daughters.
I mean, we see this with Target.
Yeah.
I think Walgreens does this, and
Yeah.
you know, there's been a number of attacks in Target. So
Yeah, need to be careful out there, ladies.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. So, all right, well, that's all we have time
All
for
right.
today. Anything we didn't cover, we'll cover on Thursday. And so,
Are we back on Thursday?
actually,
Yes.
I want to recommend.
I don't think you're here.
You know, one of our great friends of the past here, Dr. John Morris, wrote a book called The Young Earth. You know, if you want to find out more about some of the fossils and things like that, you know, and rapid formation of things, this is an incredible
great
book,
book.
easy to read book. John Morris, The
Hey,
Young
if
Earth.
people want to send us in any articles to comment on, I mean, we get tons and tons of articles each week, but answersnews@aigus.org.
It'd be great.
All right.
Yeah,
God
we'll
bless,
use them.
guys.
So, all right, we'll see you back on Thursday.